They said we were weak once, primitive, unworthy. When the Empire first landed, they didn't ask. They took. Earth's skies turned black with their ships, and for 10 years we knelt. Until we didn't. I remember the day the Resistance detonated their first antimatter spike in New Kyoto. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun, and for the first time, the Empire bled. I was just a kid then. Now I'm the commander of Earth's orbital defense, and today, the bastards are knocking again. The holoscreen blinked alive in the war room. The same logo I remembered from childhood burned red into the center, the Imperial crest. A half circle of stars surrounding a single eye, always watching, always taking. General Caro stood behind me, silent as always. He'd fought in the ground wars during the rebellion, lost a leg, a wife, and half his mind, but not his hatred. "Put it through," I said. The room dimmed. The hologram formed above the round table, shimmering blue and translucent, but the voice was solid as steel. "Commander Thorne," the Imperial envoy began, "this is a request for humanitarian aid. Our central supply routes have collapsed. Famine is spreading across our outer colonies. Our med units are crippled. Our civilians are dying." The voice wasn't human, not exactly. A high-born synthetic hybrid, probably designed for diplomacy. Face too smooth, too perfect. The kind of voice meant to make you feel without ever meaning. "You remember the Treaty of Seoul," the envoy continued. "When Earth seceded, the ban was mutual. No contact, no aggression. But that ban, Commander, was meant to preserve life, not witness it perish." I leaned back in my chair. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. "We buried 6.2 billion people because of your empire," I said flatly. "You know how long it took us to grow food again? To breathe clean air without coughing up blood?" Silence. "You've violated our space. You broke the ban. Again. This is not a request. It's a damn invasion cloaked in pity." Caro's voice growled low behind me. "Should have fired on sight." The envoy flickered. Maybe emotion, maybe static. "We are not your enemy anymore. The Emperor who authorized the war is dead. His line ended. We come in peace, seeking only—" "You don't get to seek anything," I snapped. "You come begging for the hand you tried to cut off. And Earth? We remember. Every crater, every scream in the dirt, every goddamn child turned into ash." I leaned forward, letting them see the fury in my eyes. "We didn't shut our doors because we were afraid. We shut them because mercy almost cost us everything." Another beat of silence. Then the envoy said something I didn't expect. "We have no fleet left." A few heads in the room turned. Even Caro's breathing paused. "What?" "The civil war within the Empire. Our colonies rebelled after the collapse. What remains of the throne is scattered. The fleet was destroyed in the Zenthian Rift. We are dying. We came to Earth because you survived." I felt the cold truth settle across the room. Not diplomacy. Desperation. They weren't just asking for help. They were crawling to the last world that stood against them. And I had to decide whether to open the door again or slam it forever. But before I could respond, another alert flashed red on the console. "Unauthorized atmospheric entry." "Another ship?" Caro barked. "No," I muttered, scanning the data. "It's not theirs. It's something else." Coordinates locked in. An unknown vessel, not Imperial class. Not ours either, heading straight toward the ruins of old Chicago. Stealth field broken. No response to hails. It was coming in hot. And then, the worst part. Our orbital scans caught something in its core. Something ticking. A bomb? A message? Whatever it was. It wasn't peace. The war room was already a furnace of tension, but when the scan confirmed the incoming vessel wasn't Imperial, every breath froze. Caro slammed his synthetic fist on the console. Unknown? How the hell did it slip through Saturn's sentry grid? I stared at the readout, jaw clenched. It didn't. It walked right in like it owned the place. Earth's defense network wasn't just the strongest in the system. It was paranoid by design. After what the Empire did, we wired our orbit with enough AI-driven artillery to glass a moon. Nothing slipped through unless we let it. But this ship had, not stealthed, not shielded, just ignored. Like the defense system had taken one look and decided not to care. It was shaped like nothing I'd ever seen. Long, asymmetrical, no identifiable propulsion system, no visible weapons. Just a long, pale structure coasting into our skies like a falling god. The room's tension splintered when the projection zoomed into the hull. Carved into the metal were strange markings, symbols that didn't belong to the Empire or any of the known colonies. In fact, they didn't even look like writing. They looked like scars, burned into the shell by something ancient. "They're not here to talk," Caro said quietly, "and they're not with the Empire." The envoy's hologram shimmered as he took in the feed. Even that bastard looked confused. "This ship is not Imperial," it admitted. "We've never seen this class." "No, shut," I muttered. "And you're telling me this isn't one of your dead Emperor's toys left behind to make a statement?" "No," the envoy said, and for the first time I heard real fear in its voice. "But we've seen them before." The room went still again. "They appeared on Erithus Prime," the envoy went on, 8 months ago. They dropped into orbit without communication, launched probes into our oceans, and left. 3 days later, our atmosphere began to change. Radiation, heat, something poisoned the planet. 80 million died in a week. "And you didn't warn anyone," Caro growled. "Would you have listened?" the envoy countered. I ignored them both, eyes locked on the data streaming from the falling vessel. The ship was dropping fast, but not crashing. It was deliberate, controlled descent, headed straight for what used to be Chicago, before the Empire turned it into radioactive sand. "What happens if it lands?" I asked, no one in particular. The AI voice of our defense grid answered instead. "Unknown atmospheric energy signature, composition anomalous, estimated contact in T-11 minutes, surface impact likely non-explosive, effect radius undetermined." Which was military speak for, "We don't know what it'll do, but it might kill us all." I turned to the comms officer. "Get the Valkyrie squadron in the air. I want intercept missiles on standby, rail cannons loaded, and the arc battery primed to fire." He hesitated. "Sir, if we fire first." "I said load it, not fire it." I looked back at the holo feed. "We don't poke until it breathes wrong." The envoy's face sharpened. "Commander Thorne, you must understand. That vessel may not be targeting Earth specifically. It may be following something else." My stomach tightened. "Like what?" "It didn't appear randomly. Our best minds believe these ships follow certain patterns. Broken space, exposed atmospheres, old ruins, locations of significance." Caro's eyes flared. "Chicago." I didn't want to admit it, but he was right. Beneath the radiation and ash of that dead city was something ancient, buried before the Empire ever set foot on Earth, something even our own scientists refused to study. The Arc Vault, the place we swore never to open again. I tapped the intercom. "Rhea, get me visuals on Vault 7. Now." The screen shifted to a desolate crater. Torn buildings, melted streets, a steel door buried in debris, sealed tight with 1/2 kilometer of reinforced alloy. And above it, the ship. Slowing, hovering, like it was remembering. "They know," I whispered. The envoy's voice was flat. "They always knew. Your ancestors touched something they shouldn't have. That vault, it doesn't belong to Earth. It was planted. By who? No answer. The ship stopped moving, just a whisper above the sand. And then, without sound or warning, a beam of light dropped from its underbelly. Not bright, not hot, just there, silent, pale, like moonlight bleeding into the vault's surface. We watched in stunned silence as the door, sealed since before the Empire's arrival, opened. Not with explosions or grinding gears. It simply unfolded, like the planet had been waiting. Inside, darkness. The scan feeds exploded with unreadable data, electromagnetic surges, thermal echoes. Even the AI refused to process it. One by one, the satellites above the site began to fail. Caro whispered, "That thing just opened a tomb." "No," the envoy corrected. "It opened a signal." At that moment, every screen in the war room turned black. Power flickered, and the lights died. For 2 seconds, Earth fell silent. And then we heard it. Not through speakers, not from the ship. Inside our heads, a voice, not words, not language, just feeling. Deep, ancient, endless grief, cold like the void, hot like death. A message no one wanted to receive. It asked nothing. It remembered. We all stood there, breathing like hunted animals. I felt my knees lock, my pulse racing. Caro was gripping the edge of the table like it was keeping him from falling. The envoy's hologram flickered violently, then vanished. And then, the screens blinked back to life. But the ship was gone. Vanished. Only the vault remained open, and above it a single black spike embedded in the ground, 10 meters tall, smooth, metallic, humming with unreadable energy. A marker, a warning, maybe worse. "Get me a drone inside the vault," I ordered, my voice barely steady. The feed cut in within seconds. The drone moved through a hallway of obsidian and gold. Symbols on the walls shimmered as it passed. Every foot deeper into the vault made the signal stronger. Our instruments screamed. Our AI refused to translate anything beyond 2 words. "They're listening." Caro's voice was ragged. "We have to shut it down." "Shut what down?" I muttered. "The vault, that spike, everything. Seal it, bury it. Wipe the crater off the map if we have to." But I couldn't move. Not yet. The drone turned a corner. There was something waiting. A chamber. Round. Gigantic. And inside it, something that made my blood freeze. A body. Human. Or something trying to be. Suspended mid-air in a field of energy. Skin pale, muscles lean, hair black as night. Eyes closed, but its chest was glowing. Alive, barely, and on its chest, the Earth emblem. Old world design. Pre-Empire. Pre-contact. "Who is that?" Caro whispered. I couldn't answer. But the AI translated one more phrase from the vault walls, this time in perfect English. The first to disobey. The room was dead quiet. No one dared speak as the image of that figure hovered on the screen, suspended in a gravity field, half lit by the faint amber glow from its chest. Eyes still closed. Not breathing, but alive, or something close to it. We all saw it. The emblem burned onto its chest plate. The old Earth sigil, the one lost after the Unification War, before the Empire ever showed up. A relic from a time no one was supposed to remember. "Get me a DNA scan," I muttered, barely above a whisper. The drone moved closer, humming softly, sensors reaching forward. The field around the figure shimmered, almost pulsing as it responded to the proximity, like it was aware, like it could feel us watching. The results blinked onto the display a second later. 95.8% human. But that wasn't what stopped my breath. It was the bottom line. Subject classification. Genotype 0. Unregistered. Pre-colonial genome. Caro stared at it. What the hell does that mean? It means, I said slowly, this thing isn't just old. It's before everything. Before Earth went into the stars. Before the Empire. Before even the AI wars. How the hell is that possible? Someone whispered. The question bounced around the room, but no one had an answer. Our entire history, every piece of human expansion into the stars, started after the fall, after the world collapsed and we rebooted civilization. But this thing, it wasn't part of the reboot. It was from before the world ended. We're looking at a human who never belonged to the Empire, I said. Never uploaded, never modified, pure, untouched. Caro's voice was thick. Then why is it locked in a vault, guarded by a ship we've never seen, from an alien species that nuked an imperial world without a word? Good question. But we were past questions now. That spike in the sand outside, it wasn't just a marker, it was a trigger, a signal, and the vault was responding to it, ancient tech waking up after centuries, or maybe millennia, of silence. The drone feed suddenly shook. Sparks exploded on the screen. The camera fizzled for a second, and then we heard a sound. Not static, a voice, rough, male, old, worn like stone. Who speaks for Earth? Every person in the room froze. The voice wasn't from the drone. It came through the speakers, through the floor, through us. The figure in the chamber was awake. Its eyes opened, pitch black. No whites, no pupils, just darkness. And it stared straight at the drone, like it was looking through it, into us. I stepped forward. This is Commander Thorne. You're speaking to Earth Central Command. There was a pause. No sound, no movement. And then the figure's head tilted slightly, almost curiously. You broke the chains. I felt it. The weight is gone. Caro looked at me, confused. I didn't respond. The figure's voice was like gravel, ancient, not just old in years, old in suffering. The Empire, gone? They're fractured, I said, collapsing. Their fleets are in ruins. Their throne is empty. Another pause. Then the cycle has ended. At last, I felt something crawl up my spine. What cycle? The lights in the vault dimmed. The drone feed jittered again. And the figure smiled, not wide, not friendly. Just the kind of smile you see on someone who knows a secret too heavy for the world. You were not meant to remember. But I do. The vault walls lit up. Symbols pulsed in rhythmic waves, like heartbeat. The AI tried to translate again but failed. Characters looped into one another, ancient language that predated even our machines. Caro leaned in. Commander, we need to shut that vault. Now! We can't, I muttered. Not without knowing what's inside. Another voice crackled through the comms. Rhea, from Tactical. Sir, we have movement. Multiple heat signatures around the spike. Ground level. They're coming out of the sand. Define they, I said. Not human, not imperial, not mechanical either. The screen changed. New feeds from ground drones surrounding the crater. Figures were emerging from the sand, tall, thin, wrapped in dark cloth and bone plating. Their faces were masked in what looked like obsidian glass. They moved slowly, ritualistically, like they belonged there. Are they armed? No weapons visible, Rhea said, but they're circling the spike, kneeling, like worship. Caro growled. The hell did we wake up? Some kind of cult? The figure in the vault spoke again. They were left behind to wait, fail-safes, custodians, but they do not remember either. Not fully. Wait for what? I asked. The figure's black eyes locked on the screen again, to see if humanity deserved to live or not. That hit the room like a sledgehammer. No one moved. No one breathed. What the hell are you? I asked, voice low. The figure closed its eyes. For the first time, it looked almost sad. I was the first to rebel. Against the architects, against the cycle of control. I chose Earth. I chose us. They buried me here when they couldn't kill me. My head spun. The Empire didn't build this vault. You're telling me this predates even them? The Empire was nothing but a shadow of the first masters, copying their cruelty. I watched it rise. I watched it fall. And then the figure looked through the drone again. But now you have a choice. I stared at the screen. What choice? The vault pulsed brighter. The chamber hummed. To open the gate, or close it forever. Gate to what? But the figure didn't answer, because suddenly the spike outside began to melt, not explode, not disintegrate. It just folded into itself, dissolving into black mist. And from that mist, a shape emerged. Not human, not machine, a sphere, floating, glowing faintly, silent. And then it spoke, a voice unlike any we'd ever heard. Cold, emotionless, not spoken in sound, but imprinted directly into our minds. Unauthorized breach detected. Vault Primus activation exceeds allowed parameters. Initiate reclamation protocol. The figure inside the vault snarled. They found us! Suddenly, everything shifted. The vault began to collapse inward, not destructively, more like it was folding into a different dimension. The figure screamed, and the sound shattered every speaker in the room. The drone feed went dead. Alarms blared, power fluctuations surged. The atmosphere around old Chicago turned black, a storm of gravity waves pushing debris miles into the air. And then, silence. Nothing. The vault was gone. Not destroyed, just gone. Caro stood beside me, pale, eyes wide. What the hell just happened? I turned slowly to the comms team. Get me every satellite feed, every AI archive, everything we have on ancient vaults. I want to know who those architects were, who built that gate, and what's waiting on the other side. One of the techs swallowed hard. Sir, we might have just alerted a civilization older than the galaxy. No, I said, voice low. We didn't just alert them. I looked back at the last frozen frame of the vault before it vanished. That black-eyed man staring right into us. We just reminded them Earth still exists. The vault was gone. Erased from the map, not vaporized, not crumbled, retracted, pulled out of reality like it had never existed in the first place. All that remained was a glassed crater and a humming silence that felt like it was watching us. The war room was dark, except for emergency lights. The central grid was fried from the pulse. We were running on isolated systems now, and every major AI had gone into lockdown protocol. Not a crash, a deliberate retreat. Even the machines were afraid. General Caro hadn't said a word in minutes, just stared at the screen like something had torn his mind in half. They pulled him back, he muttered eventually. That thing, the one with the eyes, they pulled him back before he could finish. Or before we could ask the wrong question, I said. No one responded, Not even the comms crew. Most of them were still pale, some shaking. You can train for war, for invasions, for orbital sieges, but not this. Not ancient vaults swallowing reality and voices that speak through your soul. I pulled my chair in and leaned toward the tactical console. Run global scan. Deep orbit to crust. Any new anomalies, gravitational shifts, unexplained activity? I want it up now. The techs got to work. Caro looked at me finally. You think they're coming? I looked back at him. Number, they're already here. 10 hours later, we had our first confirmation. Southwest of Nairobi, the ground cracked open in perfect circular precision. No tectonic activity. No seismic warning. Just a symmetrical hole 800 meters wide and bottomless by all scans. Surveillance drones sent inside were shredded by magnetic interference. Then another hole opened, this one in the ocean, off the coast of Greenland, and then a third, inside an asteroid in the belt, which had been stable and dead for centuries. Each opening pulsed with the same signature as the vault. 0-point gravitational collapse. Whatever we'd awakened, it wasn't limited to Earth. And it wasn't asleep anymore. I sat alone in the command dome, staring at an old analog photo I kept in my desk drawer. My father, before the Empire took him. He'd always talked about the first silence, said there were things Earth had done before the records, that maybe we hadn't been victims when the Empire invaded. Maybe we were hiding. Back then, I thought it was just war trauma, a soldier's paranoia. But now? Now I wasn't so sure. The door behind me hissed open. Rhea entered, eyes tired, uniform torn. You need to see this. I followed her down to the secure data vault. Physical drive storage, old school, built before the digital age, back when paranoia still had a body. She pulled a thick, dust-covered casing from the archive and slid it into the playback system. This is from the original deep memory cache, pre-fall. No one's touched it since the Treaty of Embers. The screen flickered, static, then rolled into video. Black and white, fuzzy. A man, tall white lab coat, weathered face, stood in front of a massive sphere, identical to the one that appeared at the vault site. He was sweating. Terrified. If you're watching this, he said, then the vault has opened, and that means the architects have returned. Caro and 2 others had entered by now. No one spoke. We were never alone. The Empire didn't find us. They were guided to us. A trap. A distraction. Humanity was seeded across the stars because we were dangerous, too adaptable, too unpredictable. The man swallowed hard. We disobeyed first. We tampered with the source. We opened the gates. Not once, but twice. The first time they erased half the planet. The second time they buried us under our own ashes and blamed it on war. The image zoomed in on the sphere, a faint glow at its center, a heartbeat. If the vault activates, that means the signal has reached the outer dark. The ones who listen, they will come, and they will not ask for surrender. They don't kill out of hate. They kill because we forgot our place. The screen froze. The recording cut. We stood there for a long time. Caro's voice finally broke the silence. We were never the victims. No, I said. We were the original threat. The next day, the Imperial envoy returned. Their ship, once hovering with quiet confidence, now drifted like a wounded animal. No escorts, no shields. They didn't even land on the tarmac. They dropped their representative into our perimeter like a crate. He looked worse than before. Pale, eyes bloodshot, clothes ripped and burnt. He stumbled into the command dome with one thing in his hand, a piece of the vault spike. Somehow it had reappeared aboard one of their last functioning cruisers. No explosion, no impact, just there, humming on the bridge. I didn't come to negotiate, he croaked. I came to warn you. About what? I asked coldly. The envoy looked at me with something I didn't expect. Pity. There's another vault, on one of our moons. We found it years ago. Tried to open it. Failed. But now it's awake. The gate opened last night. He paused, breathing hard. Everything within 300 kilometers is gone. Not destroyed, not even disintegrated, just missing. What did you see? I asked. He shuddered. Something walked out. Not a ship, not a machine. It looked like a child. Skin like fire. Eyes like stars. It looked at our general and said, "You taught them pain. Let them teach you now." And then it touched the ground. He showed us his arm. Burnt straight to the bone from the elbow down. I was 3 rooms away. We said nothing. There was nothing to say. The envoy stepped forward. You shut Earth's doors because you feared invasion, but you were never the target. You were the containment. And now the lock is broken. He turned to leave, but paused. Whatever rises next isn't something you can bomb or outthink. They made the Empire look like insects. They didn't come to conquer. They came to collect what was stolen. And what exactly did we steal? Caro asked. The envoy smiled, bloody teeth gleaming. Existence. Later that night, I sat alone again. No meetings, no briefings, just a flask of whiskey and the weight of 1 billion lives on my shoulders. Earth wasn't innocent. We'd broken something once, and the Empire, in all their tyranny, might have just been the cosmic version of a leash, brutal, but necessary, holding back whatever we almost became. And now, the leash was cut. A ping on my console broke the silence. One of our outer observation stations, Neptune Base 4, had sent an emergency signal. I pulled it up. The message was text only. They are not gods. They are not demons. They are what comes after, and they remember us. Then static. The base was gone. Not destroyed, not even detected anymore. Gone. Just like the vault. Just like the cities that vanished in the pre-fall wars. I leaned back, my throat dry, my mind burning. We didn't just wake up a piece of the past. We'd opened the door to the future we weren't supposed to reach, and it was walking toward us. The official orders were simple. Prepare for planetary lockdown. But I knew better. Lockdowns didn't stop gods. They didn't stop the architects. And they sure as hell wouldn't stop whatever was walking out of those vaults. Across Earth's surface, defense platforms buzzed to life. Railgun batteries rotated. Orbital mines activated. Entire cities were pulled underground into bunker zones we'd built after the Empire's invasion. Fortresses meant for species with lasers and warships, not silent children with fire skin and void eyes. I stood at the edge of Observation Deck 9, watching the night sky flicker with strange pulses from deep orbit. Lights that weren't stars. Movements that defied velocity logic. Chatter from Mars said their ground was trembling, and all their AIs had gone into red sleep, which no one had even known was a protocol. That meant shutdown due to existential threat. Existential, that's what they called it when even synthetic minds refused to act. Caro joined me quietly, a heavy coat thrown over his uniform. He didn't say anything at first, just looked out into the dark with me, the silence between us full of everything we couldn't voice. 3 more colonies lost contact this morning, he said finally. Titan, Zion Outpost, and Lumen 6. No sign of attack, just silence. I nodded. I've been reading the Black Files, I replied. The old war logs from before the fall. The ones we were told didn't exist. Caro's jaw tightened. And? We started this. He looked at me, bitter. No, I mean before the Empire. Before even the AI wars. There's a name buried in the vault texts, kept showing up in the deep core language. Even our strongest AI translation models wouldn't say it aloud, just gave it a string of numbers every time. I pulled up the symbol on my wrist pad. A single spiral burned into a ring. Caro stared at it. "I've seen that before," he said quietly. "Tattooed on prisoners from the outer reach, the ones who claimed to hear the pulse of the world. We called them broken, thought it was some religious madness." "It wasn't madness," I said. "It was a signal. A memory." Caro turned to face me fully. "What are you saying, Thorn?" I didn't answer. Instead, I tapped a sequence on my pad. A hidden frequency pulsed out from the tower, not broadcasted across comms, but deeper, beneath the static. Something answered. A single word. "Return." I locked eyes with him. We're not the only ones hiding on this planet. Some of us remembered. We went underground that night, deep into Sector Nul, an abandoned district in what was once the Siberian core. The region had been sealed after the rebellion, classified as a radiation zone. That was a lie. The elevator dropped for 20 minutes. It wasn't smooth. The machinery groaned like it hadn't moved in decades. It probably hadn't. At the bottom, we entered a corridor lined with bone-white stone. No lights, no sound. Rhea was already there, ahead of us. She'd been the one to find the first vault signatures in this zone 2 years ago, but Command shut her down. Now she looked back at us with eyes that didn't flinch. "You're late," she said. "What is this place?" Caro asked, voice low. She didn't answer. Just led us forward. The chamber we entered felt ancient, not because of dust or decay, but because the air remembered. It carried weight, memory, guilt. Dozens of them were waiting. Human. Some old, some young. None of them afraid. Every one of them bore that same spiral ring tattooed into their flesh. The leader stepped forward, an older man with silver hair and skin the color of deep bronze. His voice was calm, deep. "You have questions?" he said. "We have answers." I spoke first. "Who are you?" "We are the Silence Keepers," he said. "The ones who remembered Earth's first rebellion, the real one, against the ones who made the stars." "You mean the architects?" His face darkened at the name. "They were never gods. They were jailers. They seeded thousands of worlds, including this one, each with vaults, each with guardians. Earth was the first to refuse obedience." "And the man in the vault?" I asked. The Silence Keeper's eyes grew heavy. "He was the first to disobey, the first to break the control. And because of him, we suffered the great forgetting, the fall, our history erased, our skies rewritten." Caro stepped forward. "Then what do they want now?" "Balance," the man said, "but not the kind you think. The architects don't seek to destroy, they seek to correct. And Earth, to them, is a mistake." A screen flickered to life behind him. Old tech, analog feed, and on it, the same black spike we'd seen in old Chicago, only this one was pulsing, and it wasn't alone. 16 others just like it, spread across Earth, buried deep, connected. "They're waking up," the man said. "Not as weapons, not as messages, but as keys." "To what?" Caro demanded. The man looked at me. "To Earth's original purpose." I felt the question before I spoke it. "You're telling me Earth wasn't just seeded, it was designed?" "Yes," the man whispered, "as a crucible. To test what happens when free will is given without restriction. That's why they feared us. That's why the Empire was allowed to rise, to cage us. And that's why now, as the cage falls, they're coming to see what we've become." We returned to command 3 hours later with everything we'd learned. The others didn't believe us, not fully, but they didn't stop us either. Fear does that. It clears room for truths no one wants to hear. Rhea worked around the clock, mapping the other vaults, each one connected to massive underground systems we didn't even know existed. Cities without light, machines with no creators, signals repeating endlessly in a language no AI would translate. And then, the first true rupture happened. In the Andes. The mountain cracked apart, not exploded, split like paper. Out walked a figure 30 feet tall, draped in robes made of energy. It didn't speak, didn't move aggressively, it just stood there. And every person within 50 miles stopped moving. Heartbeats slowed, voices died, even birds fell from the sky. A global broadcast echoed in every tongue, in every ear. Judgment proceeds. All deviations will be recorded. This wasn't war. This was accounting. Earth wasn't being attacked. We were being evaluated. Now the question became real. Do we resist or comply? Caro stood in the war room the next morning and said the words none of us wanted to hear. If this is judgment, then I say we give them something to be afraid of. Half the room agreed. The other half said it would only make things worse. But I knew the truth. This was never about resistance or surrender. This was about memory. The architects weren't gods, they were observers, and Earth was the one world they feared, because we weren't designed to obey. We were designed to change, to adapt, to become more. And maybe that scared them. Maybe that's why they buried our history and gave us an empire to keep us distracted. But it failed. We remembered. And now we had a choice. Wake the rest of the vaults, open all the doors and face whatever came through, or lock them again and live under a new leash. Caro stood beside me as we looked out at the night sky once more. Stars blinking unnaturally, space distorting like it was trying to decide what shape to become. I looked at him and said, "Let's see what happens when Earth remembers who it really is." The order was given at 0400 hours. Initiate Project Prometheus. There were no cheers, no dramatic speeches, just a quiet exchange of looks between people who understood what it meant. We weren't preparing anymore. We were becoming. Prometheus was never just a myth buried in Earth's forgotten data streams. It was a failsafe, a relic from a time before the fall, when Earth still dared to believe it could defy the stars, the last contingency created by those who remembered the original vaults. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a trigger, for us, for what we used to be. We'd found 7 vaults so far. The others were still buried, dormant, or hiding in plain sight beneath oceans, mountains, or dead cities, each one pulsing quietly, waiting. We were going to wake them all. The facility sat beneath the wreckage of the old lunar ascension ring, the space elevator that was destroyed during the Empire's initial occupation. All this time, we thought it had been abandoned, turned to rubble. It hadn't. It had been converted. The elevator's foundation, once a launch station, now served as the core of Prometheus. Shielded beneath lunar rock, guarded by quantum encryption, it held the codes and triggers required to override the vault's containment. Earth hadn't forgotten its own secrets. It had just buried them deep enough that only desperation could uncover them. Caro and I stood in the core chamber. Rhea monitored the resonance fields on the upper deck, her eyes locked on data so unstable even the AIs refused to analyze it. "They're still sinking," she said. "Vault 03 in Mali is resisting. Could blow the whole chain." Caro grunted. "Then detonate it." "No," I said. They turned to me. "We're not destroying anything. Not unless it turns hostile. The vaults aren't just storage or traps. They're alive. Whatever's inside them, it's responding to us. If we force them, we become the same tyrants the architects feared." Caro didn't like it, but he nodded. He understood. This wasn't about power. It was about memory. That night, Vault 03 opened on its own. No explosions, no quakes, just the sky above it turning blood red for 3 full seconds, and a low hum that made every bird within 300 kilometers fall silent. Inside the vault, our scouts found something impossible, a map. Carved into the stone with no tool marks, Not a planetary map, not even a stellar one. Universal, coordinates, pulses, data too old for us to fully decode. But at the center of the spiral? Earth, labeled not as a world, but as an origin point. Jesus, Rhea whispered as the map turned slowly on the holoscreen. We weren't just the first to disobey. I nodded. We were the first created. Caro leaned in close. Then what the hell are the architects? I stared at the pulsing lights across the spiral. Scared. 3 days later, the first avatar stepped through. That's what the vaults called them. Not emissaries, not soldiers, avatars, physical manifestations of humanity's past selves, not clones, not constructs, reflections. Vault 01 in Greenland cracked open like an egg, and from it emerged a woman, tall, black eyes, skin like bronze smoke, hair woven in threads of silver. She said her name was Verna. I was you once, she said. She stood at the gates of our northern defense tower, unarmed, barefoot, and completely unafraid. We let her through. She walked into command like she'd been born there, looked at me, smiled, and said, "You're ready." I didn't ask how she knew me, how she spoke our language, how she moved like she'd seen this room 1,000 times. Because deep down, some part of me remembered her too. Caro didn't trust her. Rhea didn't either. But I didn't have time for trust. I had time for truth. What are you? I asked. Not what, she said. When? I am your potential. A path you once walked. The architects tried to erase it, overwrite it with false evolution. They built the empire to suppress it. And now you're back? She nodded. Because you called us. The vaults are not prisons, they are archives of what you once were, of what you may become again. Caro stepped forward. Then why did one of you vaporize a moon colony? Verna's eyes didn't blink. That was not us. The room froze. She turned to me. They're not the only ones watching. I felt something twist in my gut. You mean the architects? Number worse. Something that devours the mistakes of the architects. The thing that comes after order fails. I stared at her. The thing that waits outside the vaults? Yes, she said. The one who never forgets. The one even the architects fear. Caro's voice dropped. And we woke it up. Verna nodded slowly. You didn't wake it up, she whispered. You made it curious. We spent the next 4 days sinking the vaults. One by one, they opened. Vault 09 in Australia revealed an atmospheric engine capable of altering planetary oxygen levels. Vault 05 beneath Siberia activated a global neural field that made half our satellites obsolete. Vault 12 in the Sahara pulsed with a song no one could understand, except Verna, who said it was a birthright. And then Vault 02 opened in silence. Nothing came out. No light. No figures. Just a single word etched in the sand outside. Choose. Verna stood beside me as we stared at the transmission. What does it mean? I asked. She looked at me with something between pride and sorrow. You were never meant to inherit the stars. You were meant to challenge them, to break their rules, to see the walls of the universe and ask, why? And now, she said, you decide whether to rise or vanish. Caro wasn't convinced. This is poetic garbage? No, Verna said, turning to him. This is your final test. You either awaken your full potential, or the ones who erase civilizations will erase you next. And what happens if we wake it? I asked. Her eyes locked onto mine. You stop being human as you know it. The vote wasn't easy. Council was divided. Half argued to shut the vaults again, bury them deeper, delay the end, as humanity always did. The other half, the ones like Caro, Rhea, and myself, knew there was no more delay. The sky was cracking. Time was thinning. The architects had come, and something darker stood behind them. We cast the deciding vote at midnight. Activate full Prometheus sequence. Every vault, every archive, every forgotten part of ourselves, open, not for war, not for conquest, but to finally remember what Earth was meant to be. They say when it happened, the sky turned violet. Every vault burst into light. The oceans hummed. The gravity shifted. And across the planet, billions of people felt it in their bones. Not pain, not fear, recognition, like waking up from a coma you didn't know you were in. And then, silence. The kind of silence that only comes before the universe speaks. And it did. From the center of the earth, a pulse echoed outward, not through the air, not through machines, but through existence itself. And the stars dimmed, just for a moment. But long enough for every civilization watching, the empire remnants, the broken colonies, even the architects beyond the veil, to understand. Earth remembered. And Earth was no longer just human. The world changed in a single breath. Across every continent, vaults pulsed in sync. Old stone and impossible technology humming with a rhythm that wasn't just mechanical, it was alive. The sky shimmered in colors that had no name. Oceans glowed. Birds stopped singing. Gravity turned soft for a few seconds, like the planet forgot how to hold weight. Billions of people stood outside their homes in silence. They didn't scream. They didn't panic. They just looked up. And for the first time in human history, we all felt the same thing. We were not alone. Not in the stars. Not on this planet. Not even in our own minds. Rhea called it a global resonance. Verna called it the calling. Caro called it what it truly was. The moment before rebirth. In the hours that followed, humanity fractured. Some embraced it, gathered around the vaults, touching the stones, singing old languages no one remembered teaching them. People who had never met began sharing the same dreams, symbols, memories, places they had never seen. Others ran, hid, called it a false god's invasion. Those with old faiths declared it blasphemy. The remnants of the empire that still operated in Earth's orbit sent one final message. Surrender the vaults or be purged. We didn't respond, because they were already too late. The vaults were no longer doors. They were becoming us. In the upper towers of command, Rhea watched the feeds. She hadn't slept in 40 hours. Her eyes were bloodshot, voice hollow. Still she moved like her veins were filled with fire. Vault 07 just reshaped the terrain outside Nairobi, she said. The mountain moved, lifted. No tectonic activity. It just stood up. Stood up? I echoed. Yeah, like a giant. But it's made of stone. It's not a creature. It's Earth itself responding. Caro stood behind her. He wasn't surprised. Territorial defense, he muttered. Planetary memory turned into instinct. The vaults are rewriting the rules of physics. And the architects? I asked. They're watching, Rhea said. Just outside orbit. 12 ships. No movement, no hails. They're waiting to see what we become. I looked at Verna, who stood in the corner of the room, silent and still, her black eyes watching something none of us could see. They're not going to wait forever, I said. She nodded. They don't have to. You're almost there. She took me into the vault again that night. Not one of the public ones, the first. The original vault buried under the Mariana Trench, now risen above sea level for the first time in history, standing tall like a black tooth reaching into the clouds. We traveled in silence. Verna didn't use a ship. She bent space. One blink, we were in command. Next blink, We were standing at the gates of a temple that should have been buried under miles of water and volcanic rock. The air was heavy. Every breath felt like a question waiting to be answered. "You asked me once what would happen if you remembered," she said. "And?" I asked. She turned to me, her face calm but unreadable. "You become a threat to every structure the architects ever built." She opened the gates without touching them. Inside, it wasn't a vault. It was a mirror. Not glass, not reflection. Reality itself mirrored back at me, not my image, but my potential. Versions of me, hundreds, thousands, all walking different paths. Warrior, tyrant, savior, destroyer, versions who had sided with the architects, versions who had betrayed them, even one who had burned the earth just to spite the stars. "This is what they fear," Verna said. "That you are not one thing. That you are everything, unstable, unpredictable, uncontrollable." I stepped forward. My reflection didn't move like me anymore. It smiled first and whispered, "You are the virus in their code." Back on the surface, chaos had ignited. Not from the vaults, but from us. The Empire's remnants had launched a kinetic strike from orbit. One final act of fear, a 2,000-ton rod of tungsten traveling at 10 kilometers per second, aimed straight at the European Resistance Center in Berlin. We saw it too late to stop it. But the Earth did not. Vault 04 opened wide and something massive emerged, a being of glass and wind, no bones, no eyes, just presence. It didn't attack the rod, it caught it mid-air, turned the rod into dust with a whisper, then vanished into the soil again. No fanfare, no pride, just balance. The Empire's fleet turned and ran, but they didn't get far. Something pulled them out of the sky. Not weapons, not defense systems, the planet itself. Space tore open like paper and swallowed them, not destroying the ships, but simply removing them, like a god cleaning its table. And still, Verna said we were not finished. On the 5th day after the awakening, the architects finally spoke. Not through ships, not through weapons, but through the stars themselves. One by one, stars across the night sky flickered and rearranged, a message written in constellation. The AI struggled to translate it, but one phrase came through clearly. Return to compliance or return to nothing. Caro was livid. They're not even trying to pretend anymore. They don't have to, Verna said. You're past the point of diplomacy. And if we ignore it? Rhea asked. They'll test you, she said, one final time, with what they left behind. She turned to me again. You must go to the last vault. Vault 00, not on Earth, not in space, but beneath time itself. A paradox chamber buried in the quantum fabric of the planet, hidden by our own perception. Only someone who had touched the mirror vault could find it. Only someone who had chosen their reflection. I didn't know how I did it, but I found it. I fell into it, not with steps, not with motion, but with intention. The air was dark. Time was slow. My body didn't move, but my thoughts ran like rivers. At the center of the vault was a chair, simple, wooden, old Earth design, and on it sat a man. He looked like me, exactly like me, except older, wiser, worn. Sit, he said. I did, he smiled. You're the last? The last what? He leaned forward. The last human who hasn't yet become. I looked at him. Become what? Yourself. And then the vault spoke, not in sound, not in words, in memory, and I remembered. Everything, the beginning, the first rebellion, the exile, the rewriting of history, the architect's fear, the chains placed inside our DNA, the slow death they engineered for our species, and how Earth, in one final act of defiance, hid its own evolution inside the soil, not to destroy the stars, but to survive them. When I opened my eyes again, I was alone. But I was no longer just human. I was Earth's answer. I returned to command. Rhea looked at me like she saw a ghost. Caro took one step back without realizing it. Verna simply bowed her head and whispered, "It is done." And outside, the stars screamed. They weren't twinkling. They were dying. One by one, black spots appeared in the sky, like pinpricks in reality. The architects had sent their final messengers, wraiths of entropy, destroyers of choice, beings made of uncreation, and they were descending. But this time, Earth didn't wait. The vaults pulsed, the skies opened, and every human who had awakened, every soul who had touched the pulse, began to change. Not physically, not biologically, but in perception. We saw time. We saw possibility. We saw the truth. We were not meant to be ruled. We were not meant to be erased. We were meant to evolve. And as the darkness descended, we stood ready, together. They came without warning. No fleet, no countdown, no demand for surrender. The sky tore open like it had grown tired of pretending to be sky. From the black gash above Earth, they descended, beings born of the architect's final fear. The wraiths. They had no form, not one the eye could fully understand. They flickered like shadow and static, mouths that spoke without sound, fingers that dissolved light when they moved. Not made of matter, not made of code. They were something older. They were unmaking itself. Our weapons didn't matter. Our shields, our ships, our orbital batteries. Nothing landed. Nothing touched them. Lasers passed through them. Nuclear charges faded to whispers. Even the AI networks refused to engage. One by one, the systems shut down and went silent. It was like Earth itself knew what we were facing and was waiting to see what we would choose. I stood in the command dome, surrounded by leaders and soldiers and silence. Verna's voice was calm behind me. "They are not here to kill." I turned sharply. "Could have fooled me." "They are here to observe, to see if you fold, if you forget again. If you beg." I stared at the massive black mass floating above the Atlantic. Its edges moved like smoke being played in reverse. The space around it cracked, as if reality couldn't hold its presence. "And if we don't?" I asked. Verna's eyes met mine. "Then you pass." Caro stood beside me, one hand on the rail, his other clenching a sidearm that wouldn't do a damn thing. "Pass what?" "The final test," she said. "The test the architects never wanted you to survive." On every continent, vaults began to hum. Some cracked open further, others split into dozens of floating shards that hovered above cities. No one panicked now. Panic had passed. What remained was raw clarity. People began to gather, not because we ordered them to, because the vaults called. They came barefoot, armored, sick, young, old, armed with nothing but instinct, humans who had never met, never trained, never known what this day would be. But when they stood together under those humming lights, they looked like they belonged there. And then it began. The wraiths moved, not to attack, to test. The first trial was over Japan. A wraith descended into a city of over 6 million. No noise, no energy, just presence. And in its presence, people began to vanish, not die. Vanish, one by one, mothers, sons, soldiers, doctors, erased as if they were sketches in the wrong story. But then the vault pulsed, and the people returned. Same faces, same clothes, but with eyes that burned silver, not confused, not angry, awake. "They tried to overwrite us again," Rhea said, scanning the new data from Vault 08. "But the vault rewound time for them." "No," I said. "Not time, memory. The vault protected their memory from the wraiths. The people remembered who they were, and that was enough to bring them back." Verna nodded. This is what Earth always had. Not weapons, not machines, identity, the ability to shape reality through self-awareness. It's what made you dangerous. I leaned on the console. So, remembering, freeze us? No, she said, voice soft. Remembering makes you real. Above South America, a second wraith descended. It tried to sink the land, made the rivers boil, the trees turn to ash. But this time the land didn't bend. Vault 10 rose from the rainforest, a giant mechanical root system interwoven with stone and energy. It pulsed, and the wraith paused. Then it screamed. Not in pain, in confusion. And when it screamed, the people didn't run. They sang. They didn't know the language, no one did. But they sang in unison, a low hum that matched the frequency of the vault. The air shimmered, the rivers turned gold, the trees healed, the wraith disappeared, gone, like it had never arrived. I watched from the dome, barely breathing. Caro muttered, "That's not war. That's something else." "It's humanity," Verna whispered. "Pure, undistorted, unified." "But what stops the next one?" Rhea asked. "What if they descend together?" Verna's eyes turned distant. "Then Earth answers." She looked at me. "No more tests, no more simulations. You have to speak now." "Speak to who?" I asked. She pointed at the sky. "To them." I didn't know how to do it. No training, no interface, just instinct. I stood atop the Old World Bridge in Geneva, where the Empire once held court, where the architects had built their first listening tower. The stars above were all wrong now. The constellations we had known since ancient days had warped, bent into curves and spirals. Some said they were forming a sigil. Others said it was a door. Either way, I knew what I had to do. I closed my eyes, and I remembered. Everything. The first Earth, the exile, the false history, the cycles, the lies, the countless human souls wiped clean by architect algorithms, the vaults, our last protection, the man I'd met in the paradox chamber, me, older, stronger, and the whisper from the mirror vault. You are the virus in their code. So I spoke, not with words, with presence. I let the architects feel me, not my power, my humanity, my conflict, my guilt, my fire, my memory, and for the first time in recorded history. The wraiths hesitated. One by one they paused, like statues made of dark thought. The shadows stopped flickering. The sky froze. And then they spoke. Not as one voice, as millions, millions of memories they had stolen, deleted, erased. But they couldn't erase what Earth had become. They said only one thing. "We see you." And then they knelt. All of them, every wraith, every entity, every architect vessel still orbiting in the void beyond Saturn, they knelt toward Earth. Because it was over. Because we had won. Not through war, not through death, through the one thing they could never copy, never simulate, never kill, consciousness. A year has passed. The wraiths are gone. The Empire no longer exists. The architects, still watching, somewhere. But they've gone quiet. No more messages, no more threats, because Earth is no longer under evaluation. We passed. The vaults remain open, now integrated into our cities. The people who were touched by them have become something else. Not gods, not mutants, just more, expanded, remembering who we once were. We don't call ourselves humans anymore. We call ourselves the returned. Not because we went somewhere else, but because we came back to what we always were. Builders of balance, keepers of memory, defiers of control. And if they ever try to test us again, we won't kneel, we won't run. Because now Earth does not forget. Not again. Not ever.